How's it going, everybody? This is Ron. It is May 5th. May 5th, and the year 2026 is flying by. Hope everybody's doing good. In this episode, I'm going to talk about Charles Ponzi. If you don't know who he is the guy that has the name of all schemes these days, the Ponzi scheme. You heard about that? That's when people manipulate innocent people, gullible people, and they rip them off, basically. So we're going to look at Charles Ponzi, who he was, and the way Ponzi schemes are set up. It'll never end, folks. People are going to try and rip you off with a smile on their face and promise you good returns. Be aware. Be aware, folks. But anyway, we're going to talk about that in a bit. Um, what I want to let you guys know is that I also offer a service, all right? Offer a service. And what I do is I'm an attentive listener and slash life coach. So if you need to talk to somebody about anything, maybe a goal, maybe you're having a hard time in life, you're stuck in the rut, you need someone to talk to, maybe help you find a way out of that rut, you can contact me. I have affordable rates, not expensive. Uh, you can reach me. I have all the information at the end of this video. All right. You can check me out. My email and everything's going to be at the end. All right. So now let's do what I'm supposed to do right now. Let's talk about Charles Ponzi. All right. So Charles Ponzi is this guy. All right. So Charles Ponzi, uh, he was born in Lugo, Italy. He became known in the early 1920s as a swindler in North America for his money-making scheme. He promised clients a 50% profit within 45 days or 100% profit within 90 days by buying discounted postal reply coupons in other countries and redeeming them at face value in the US as a form of arbitrage. In reality, Ponzi was paying earlier investors using the investments of later investors. While this type of fraudulent investment scheme was not invented by Ponzi, it became so identified with him that it is now referred to as a Ponzi scheme. His scheme ran for over a year before it collapsed, costing his investors $20 million, which is equivalent to around $250 million in today's money, all right? So Ponzi may have been inspired by the scheme of William W. Miller, also known as 520% Miller, a Brooklyn bookkeeper who in 1899 used a similar deception to take in $1 million, approximately $35 million today. All right. So his early life, Charles Ponzi was born in Lugo, Emilia Romagna, Kingdom of Italy, on the 3rd of March 1882. He told the New York Times that he had come from a family in Parma. Ponzi's ancestors had been well-to-do, and his mother continued to use the title Donna, but the family had subsequently fallen upon difficult times and had little money. Ponzi took a job as a postal worker early on, but soon was accepted into the University of Rome La Sapienza. His richer friends considered the university a 4-year vacation, and he was inclined to follow them around to bars, cafes, and the opera. This resulted in Ponzi spending all his money, and 4 years later he was broke and without a degree. During this time, a number of Italian boys were migrating to the US and returning to Italy as wealthy individuals. Ponzi's family encouraged him to do the same with the intention of returning his family to its former socio-economic status. His arrival in the United States on 15 November 1903, Ponzi arrived in Boston aboard the He arrived in Boston aboard the SS Vancouver. By his own account, Ponzi had $2.50 in his pocket, which is like about $90 in today's money, having gambled away the rest of his life savings during the voyage. I landed in this country with $250 in cash and $1 million in hopes, and those hopes never left me, he later told a reporter for the New York Times. He quickly learned English and spent the next few years doing odd jobs along the East Coast, eventually taking a job as a dishwasher in a restaurant where he slept on the floor. Ponzi managed to work his way up to the position of waiter, but he was fired for theft and shortchanging customers. There you go. That's his psychology right there, right? So Montreal and prison. In 1907, after several years of failing to achieve success in the U.S., Ponzi moved to Montreal, Quebec, Canada, and became an assistant teller in the newly opened Banco Zarossi, a bank located in Saint Jacques Street, started by Luigi Luis Zarossi, to service the influx of Italian immigrants arriving in the city. By this time, Ponzi had a winning personality and spoke English and French as well as Italian, which Zakov says helped him get the job at the bank. While working there, Ponzi first saw the scheme of robbing Peter to pay Paul, which later would be called a Ponzi scheme. Zarossi paid 6% interest on bank deposits, double the going rate at the time, and his bank was growing rapidly as a result. Ponzi, eventually rose to the position of bank manager. However, he found that the bank was in serious financial trouble because of bad real estate loans, and that Zarossi was funding the high interest payments not through profit on investments, but by using money deposited in newly opened accounts. Whoa, sounds like one of those schemes that people get hooked on, right? The bank eventually failed, and Zarossi fled to Mexico with a large portion of the money belonging to the bank's customers. Wow, what a nice guy. Ponzi, stayed in Montreal and for some time lived in Zarossi's house, helping the man's abandoned family while planning to return to the U.S. and start over. As Ponzi was penniless, this proved to be very difficult. Eventually, he walked into the offices of a former Zarossi customer, Canadian Warehousing, and finding no one there, wrote himself a check for $423.58, which is like $14,800 in today's money, in a checkbook he found, forging the signature of Damien Fournier, a director of the company. Confronted by police who had taken note of his large expenditures just after the forged check was cashed, Ponzi held out his wrist and said, "I'm guilty." He ended up spending 3 years as inmate number 6660 at St. Vincent de Paul Federal Penitentiary, a bleak facility located on the outskirts of Montreal. Rather than inform his mother of his imprisonment, he posted her a letter stating that he had found a job as a special assistant to a prison warden. So this guy was a psycho, right? But he was actually intelligent. I mean, he can speak several languages. He just ran the wrong way with the devil. After his release in 1911, Ponzi decided to return to the U.S. but became involved in a scheme to smuggle Italian illegal immigrants across the border. He was caught and spent 2 years in Atlanta prison. Here he became a translator for the warden who was intercepting letters from mobster Ignazio the Wolf Lupo. Ponzi ended up befriending Lupo. Another prisoner, Charles W. Morse, became a true role model to Ponzi. Morse, a wealthy Wall Street businessman and speculator, fooled doctors during medical exams by eating soap shavings to give them appearance of ill health. Morse was soon released from prison. Ponzi completed his prison term following Morse's release, having an additional month added to his term due to his inability to pay a $50 fine, equivalent to around $1,700 in today's money. Okay, so worked in a mini camp and in Boston. All right. So after Ponzi's release from prison, he made his way back to Boston while working at a mining camp as a nurse. So this guy's acting as a nurse. He came up with the idea of going to another mini camp, starting a utility there that would supply water and power and selling its stock. During this time, a fellow nurse called Pearl Gossett had suffered severe burns in an accident. Despite not knowing her, to uh, Ponzi volunteered for two major operations to donate 122 square inches of skin from his back and legs to Pearl. This resulted in pleurisy, a similar complication, and Ponzi losing his job. Pleurisy. I don't know if I said that right, but anyway. Thereafter, Ponzi continued to travel around looking for work, and in Boston he met Rose Maria Neco. I think that's how you pronounce it, a stenographer to whom he proposed marriage. Gnecco came from a family of immigrant, Italian American immigrants who had small fruit stall in downtown Boston. Though Ponzi did not tell Gnecco, I think that's how you pronounce it, about his years in jail, his mother sent Gnecco a letter telling her of Ponzi's past. Nevertheless, she married him in 1918. For the next few months, Ponzi worked at a number of businesses, including his father-in-law's grocery and the import-export company J.R. Poole, before hitting upon an idea to sell advertising in a large business listing to be sent to various businesses. He was unable to sell this idea to businesses, and his company failed soon after. Ponzi took over his wife's successful fruit company for a short time, but to no avail, and it too failed shortly after. So he's like a failure, right? So here we go. The origin of the term Ponzi scheme. The IRC scheme. Ponzi set up a small office at 27 School Street, Boston in the summer of 1919, attempting to sell business ideas to contacts in Europe. He received a letter from a company in Spain asking about the advertising catalog, which included an international reply coupon, IRC, leading Ponzi to find a weakness in the system, which, at least in principle, gave him an opportunity to make money. Postal reply coupons allowed a person in one country to pay for the postage of a reply to a correspondent in another country. RCs were priced at the cost of postage in the country of purchase, but could be exchanged for stamps to cover the cost of postage in the country where redeemed. If these values were different, there was a potential profit. Inflation after World War I had greatly decreased the cost of postage in Italy, expressed in US dollars, so that an IRC could be bought cheaply in Italy and exchanged for US stamps of higher value, which could then be sold. Ponzi claimed that the net profit on these transactions after expenses and exchange rates was in excess of 400%. This was a form of arbitrage, or profiting by buying an asset at a lower price in one market and immediately selling it in a market where the price is higher, which is basically legal. Okay, seeing an opportunity, Ponzi quit his job as a translator to execute his IRC scheme, but needed a large capital expense to buy IRCs at lower performing European currencies. He first tried to borrow money from several banks, including the Hanover Trust Company, but they were not convinced, and its manager, Henry H. Chmielewski, I think that's what he said, refused to lend him money. Subsequently, Ponzi set up a stock company to raise money for the public. He also went to several of his friends in Boston and promised that he would double their investment in 90 days in an environment when banks were paid only 5% annual interest, the great return from postal reply coupons. He explained to them, made such incredible profits easy to accomplish. Some people invested and were paid as promised, receiving $750 in interest and initial investments of $1,250, right? Securities Exchange Company. In January of 20, excuse me, in January 1920, Ponzi started his own company, the Securities Exchange Company. Sounds familiar, right? To promote the scheme. In the first month, 18 people invested in his company with a total of $1,800. He paid them promptly the very next month with money obtained from a newer set of investors. Now, this is what a Ponzi scheme is, all right? When you got to bring in people, that's how the head of the Ponzi, the schemer, makes his money. Got to learn our lesson out there, folks, all right? I'm going to say it again. In January of 1920, Ponzi started his own company called the Securities Exchange Company. Sounds legit, right? Sounds like he's some kind of Wall Street wizard to promote the scheme. Again, I'll say it, to promote the scheme, all right? In the first month, 18 people invested in this company with a total of $1,800. Okay, he paid them promptly the very next month with money obtained from a newer set of investors. All right, that's a Ponzi scheme, right? So you set up something, hey man, I'm going to guarantee you 5% or whatever it is in a month. So you get the new people coming under these guys. You're taking their money and paying them. It's like a continuation kind of thing, like a pyramid. All right. So Ponzi set up a larger office this time in the Niles building on School Street. Word spread and investments increased rapidly. So Ponzi hired agents and paid them generous commissions. Now, listen to me. If there's somebody saying out there, hey man, we're making money, we're a crypto exchange, this is how they do it, folks. See what this is right here. So he set up shop on School Street. The word spread just like a recent uh, scheme that some people, including me, got into it in a small scale. But man, crap hit the fan. And these guys aren't stupid. They're smart. They're swindlers. You know what I mean? They know how to manipulate. They'll say the right things, especially the people who are like, they need money, right? Gamblers, that mindset. All right, they'll get you. They'll get you every time. They'll tell you your funds are locked up and we got to pay some taxes. We got to pay 20% tax on what you got. You didn't even get in yet, and you got to pay taxes. And people believe that crap, and they pay it. Getting burned, right? All right. So where was I? So anyway, so between February and March of 1920, the total amount invested had risen from $5,000 to $25,000, which is about $400,000 today, respectively. As the scheme grew, there you go. As the scheme grew, as the BS company investment grew, he wasn't investing. People were giving him money, and he was paying off the earlier investors, so-called investors. So as the scheme grew, Ponzi hired more agents to seek out new investors in New England and New Jersey. At that time, investors were being paid impressive rates, which subsequently encouraged others to invest. By May 1920, he had made $420,000, which is like $6.8 million today. By June of 1920, he had invested $2.5 million in Ponzi scheme, equivalent to $40 million today. By July, he was approaching $1 million per day. So that's a Ponzi scheme, folks. So whenever you get these so-called, especially crypto investment companies, and they got some guy calling him the CEO, and it sounds good, he's making you feel good. All the early guys that came into it treat them good, and he'll make people managers. Come on, go out and recruit some more idiots. Go out some more. Go out and recruit some more feeble people, and show them that you're making money. So you show them you're making money, and you're gonna get in on it. I was guilty of that too. But anyway, so Ponzi began depositing the money in the Hanover Trust Bank of Boston, a small bank on Hanover Street in the mostly Italian North End, in the hope that once his account was large enough, he could impose his will on the bank or even be made its president. He bought a controlling interest in the bank through himself and several friends after depositing $3 million. By July 1920, Ponzi had made millions. Some of his investors had been mortgaging their homes and investing their life savings. Most did not take their profits but reinvested. Ponzi's company, meanwhile, had set up branches from Maine to New Jersey. Even though Ponzi's company was bringing in fantastic sums of money each day, the simplest financial analysis would have shown that the operation was running at a large loss. As long as money kept flowing in, existing investors could be paid with the new money. This was the only method Ponzi had to continue providing returns to existing investors, as he made no effort to generate legitimate profits. Okay, that's how it works, folks. They're gonna say we're trading. Well, if they're trading, ask the guy who's in charge. Well, what are you buying? What are you selling? What are you trading? Like exactly, like what markets? Like exactly what companies are you trading with? And another thing too, if somebody's like saying, "Oh, we got like a 96.8% win rate," that's BS. It's like saying some baseball player is going to hit a home run every game almost, right? Live and learn, folks. Live and learn. If it's too good to be true, get away fast. So you might experience that good old clawback, and you might pay people back, and you can kill yourself or something. Suicide, man. Depression. Ponzi's initial investors consisted of working class immigrants like himself. There you go. The gullible working class people, they want money, and if they see their own kind making money, they're going to jump in on it all the time. Gradually, news traveled upwards, and many well to do Boston Brahmins, whatever that is, also invested in this scheme. In its heyday, nearly 75% of Boston's police force had invested in the scheme. Wow! Police, the lawmen invested in a scheme. Right? So Ponzi was indiscriminate about whom he allowed to invest. From young newspaper boys investing a few dollars to high net worth individuals like a banker from Lawrence, Kansas, who invested $10,000 and he got scammed. The devil in disguise can manipulate you. The devil can manipulate you all the time because he's cunning, cunning. Devil is cunning. He can make you blank. Infeasibility of Ponzi scheme. Though Ponzi was still paying back investors, mostly from money from subsequent investors, he had not yet figured out a way to actually change the IRCs to cash. He also subsequently realized that changing the coupons to money was logistically impossible. Whoa, that sounds familiar, right? For example, for the initial 18 investors of January 1920, for their $1,800 investment, it would have taken 53,000 postal coupons to actually realize the arbitrage profits for the subsequent 15,000 investors that Ponzi had. He would have had to fill Titanic-sized ships with postal coupons just to ship them to the US from Europe. However, Ponzi found that all the interest payments returned to him as investors continued to reinvest. And there you go, guys. So that's how the scheme works. The guy up here, he's telling people recruit, recruit, recruit. It's just the base getting fat. The base getting fat, and he's getting the money, and then he's getting the money, and then a certain percent goes down, making people happy, appeasing people down here. more people come in. But the day people stop coming in, or maybe the law finds out what you're doing, crashes. All right, so Ponzi's subsequent lifestyle. Ponzi lived luxuriously. No crap. Of course he did. You think he was living in a ghetto, ripping off people for millions? He bought a mansion in Lexington, Massachusetts, and maintained accounts in several banks across New England. Besides Hanover Trust, he bought a locomobile. Locomobile. I guess like a train. I don't know. One of the finest cars of that time. Locomobile. Locomobile. Okay, must have been a car. Yeah, it's a car. Okay, anyway. He had initially purchased two first class tickets to Italy for a delayed honeymoon with Rose, but instead decided to change them to bring his mother from Italy to the U.S. in a first class stateroom on an ocean liner. Uh, she lived with Ponzi and Rose for some time in Lexington, but died soon after. On July 31st, 1920, Ponzi told Father Pasquale Di Milla, the director of the Italian Children's Home in Jamaica Plain, that he would donate $100,000 to honor in honor of his mother. Ponzi also bought a macaroni company and part of a wine company in an attempt to gain profits that would be used to repay the investors of the IRC scheme. All right, I gotta move on. This is gonna be part one. I'm gonna close it up, but okay. So the Locomobile Company of America was a pioneering American automobile manufacturer founded in 1899, known for its dedication to precision before the assembly line era. It was one of the earliest car manufacturers in the advent of the automobile age. For the first 2 years, you get the gist. So Locomobile was like a high-end line. So I'm going to cut this off right now. This is part one. Get ready for part two. Suspicion. Ponzi's rapid rise naturally drew suspicion. When a Boston financial writer suggested there was no way Ponzi could legally deliver such high returns in a short period of time, Ponzi sued for libel and won $500,000 in damage, as libel law at the time placed the burden of proof on the writer and publisher. This effectively neutralized any serious probes into his dealings for some time. Nonetheless, there were still signs of his eventual ruin. Joseph Daniels, a Boston furniture dealer who had given Ponzi furniture which he could not afford to pay for, sued Ponzi to cash in on the gold rush. The lawsuit was unsuccessful, but it did prompt people to begin asking how Ponzi could have gone from being penniless to being a millionaire in a short span of time. There was a run on the Securities Exchange Company, not the Securities Exchange Commission, which is like the the referees, if you will, of the financial sector, investing sector. This is his company. He created this, the Securities Exchange Company. All right. Some investors decided to pull out. So Ponzi paid them, and the run stopped. Okay. On July 24th of July 1920, the Boston Post printed a favorable article on Ponzi and his scheme that brought in investors faster than ever. At that time, Ponzi was making $250,000 a day. Try that again. $250,000 a day back in 1920. That's what millions today, man. A day, right? So if you get into one of these so-called crypto investments, that's a lot of BS. Okay, it is. It is, man. So any Ponzi's good fortune was increased by the fact that just below this favorable article, which seemed to imply that Ponzi was indeed returning 50% return on an investment after only 45 days, was a bank advertisement that stated that the bank was paying 5% returns annually. The next business day after this article was published, Ponzi arrived at his office to find thousands of Bostonians waiting to give him their money. Despite his, despite despite this reprieve, Post acting publisher Richard Grozier was running the paper in the absence of his father Edwin, its owner and publisher, and city editor Eddie Dunn were suspicious and assigned investigative reporters to look into Ponzi. He was also he was also under investigation by Massachusetts authorities, and on the day the Post printed the article, Ponzi met with state officials. He managed to divert the officials from checking his books by offering to stop taking money during the investigation. A fortunate choice, as proper records were not being kept. Ponzi's offer temporarily claimed the suspicions of the state officials. Collapse of the scheme. Okay, here you go, guys. Anytime you got this making money schemes, it seems too good to be true. The the operators talk a good game. They manipulate you. That's it. But it all collapses. It always collapses. So on the 26th of July, the Post started a series of articles that asked hard questions about the operations of Ponzi's money machine. The paper contacted Clarence M. Barron, the financial journalist who headed Dow Jones and Company, to examine Ponzi's scheme. Barron observed that though Ponzi was offering fantastic returns on investments, Ponzi himself was not investing with his own company. Why should he? He had all the other gullible people giving him money. So anyway, so Barron then noted that to cover the investments made with the Securities Exchange Company, 160 million postal reply coupons would have to be in circulation. However, only about 27,000 actually were. The United States Post Office stated that postal reply coupons were not being bought in quantity at home or abroad. Despite this substantial gross profit margin in percent on buying and selling each IRC was colossal. The overhead required to handle the purchase and redemption of these items, which were of extremely low cost and were sold individually, would have exceeded the gross profit. All right. So Barron added that even if Ponzi really was doing what he claimed to do, it would be immoral to invest with him since he would effectively be profiting at the expense of a government, either governments where he bought the coupons or the U.S. government. Okay, so the Post articles caused a panic run on the Securities Exchange Commission. Ponzi paid out $2 million in 3 days to a wild crowd outside his office. He canvassed the crowd, passed out coffee and donuts. See what I mean? He's gonna appease you, and he's gonna take your money, and you know what he's gonna do to your butt? He'll be behind your butt, and he'll be like grinding it, man. All right, it's not fun to get plowed in the you know what. Okay, so he was nice. Like I don't know if what kind of donuts was that, like Dunkin' Donuts? Were they around a long time ago? Or was it Krispy Kreme? I don't know. Many changed their minds and left their money with him. However, he attracted the attention of Daniel Gallagher, the U.S. Attorney for the District of Massachusetts. Gallagher commissioned Edwin Pride to audit the Securities Exchange Company's books, an effort made difficult by Ponzi's bookkeeping system, consisting merely of index cards with investors' names. Wow, he should have got a MacBook. In the meantime, Ponzi had hired a publicist, William McMasters. However, McMasters quickly became suspicious of Ponzi's endless talk of postal reply coupons, as well as the ongoing investigation against him. He later described Ponzi as a financial idiot who did not seem to know how to add. The investigation into Ponzi began in late July when McMasters found several highly incriminating documents that indicated Ponzi was merely robbing Peter to pay Paul. robbing Peter to pay Paul. McMasters went to Grozier, his former employer, with this information. Grozier offered him $5,000 for his story, which was printed in the Post on the 2nd of August 1920. McMaster's article declared Ponzi hopelessly insolvent, reporting that while he claimed $7 million in liquid funds, he was actually at least $2 million in debt. With interest, with interest factored in, McMasters wrote, Ponzi was as much as $4.5 million in the red. The story touched off a massive run, and Ponzi paid off in one day. Wait, try that again. Ponzi was as much as $4.5 million in the red. The story touched off a massive run, and Ponzi paid off in one day. He then sped up plans to build a massive conglomerate that would engage in banking and import/export operations. At this point, further trouble came from an unexpected quarter. Massachusetts Bank Commissioner Joseph Allen became concerned that if major withdrawals exhausted Ponzi's reserves, it would bring Boston's banking system to its knees. Allen's suspicions were further aroused when he found out a large number of Ponzi-controlled accounts had received more than $250,000 in loans from Hanover Trust. This led Allen to speculate that Ponzi was not nearly as well financed as he claimed, since he was getting large loans from the bank he effectively controlled. He ordered two bank examiners to keep an eye on Ponzi's accounts. On the 9th of August, the bank examiners reported that enough investors had cashed their checks on Ponzi's main account. Try that again. On August 9th, the bank examiners reported that enough investors had cashed their checks on Ponzi's main account there that it was severely overdrawn. Allen then ordered Hanover Trust not to pay out any more checks from Ponzi's main account. He also orchestrated an involuntary bankruptcy filing by several small Ponzi investors. The move forced Massachusetts Attorney General J. Weston Allen to release a statement that there was little to support Ponzi's claims of large-scale dealings in postal coupons. State officials then invited Ponzi note holders to come to the Massachusetts State House to furnish their names and addresses for the purpose of the investigation. On the same day, Ponzi received a preview of Pride's audit, which revealed Ponzi was at least $7 million in debt. You wonder why he wants to recruit more people. Bring people in, appease them. I want their money, right? On the 11th of August, the Post published with a front page story about his criminal activities in Montreal 13 years earlier, including his forgery conviction and his role at Zarosi's scandal-ridden bank. That afternoon, Bank Commissioner Allen seized Hanover Trust due to numerous irregularities. The commissioner thus inadvertently foiled Ponzi's plan to borrow funds from the bank vault as a last resort in the event all other efforts to obtain funds failed. The following day, Ponzi's certificate of deposit at Hanover Trust, which had been worth $1.5 million, was reduced to $1 million after bank officials tapped into was reduced to $1 million after bank officials tapped into it to cover the overdraft. Even if he had been able to convert it into cash, he would have only $4 million in assets. Okay. Amid reports that he was about to be arrested any day, Ponzi surrendered to federal authorities and accepted Pride's figures. He was charged with mail fraud for sending letters to his marks telling them their notes had matured. He was originally released on $25,000 bail and was immediately rearrested on state charges of larceny, for which he posted an additional $10,000 bond. After the Post released the results of the audit, the bail bondsman feared Ponzi might flee the country and withdrew the bail for the federal charges, sending Ponzi back to prison. Attorney General Allen declared that if Ponzi managed to regain his freedom, the state would seek additional charges and seek a bail high enough to ensure Ponzi would stay in custody. Magnitude of losses. The news brought down 5 other banks in addition to Hanover Trust. Ponzi's investors were practically wiped out, receiving less than 30 cents to the dollar. They lost about $20 million in 1920, which in today's money is like close to $350 million. By comparison, Bernie Madoff's similar scheme that collapsed in 2008 cost his investors about $18 billion, 53 times the losses of Ponzi scheme. And next time I'm going to go over Bernie Madoff because decades later, Bernie Madoff became like the worst swindler ever in the history of the United States, maybe the world. Scumbag supreme. So prison and later life. In 2 federal indictments, Ponzi was charged with 86 counts of mail fraud and faced life imprisonment. At the urging of his wife, Ponzi pleaded guilty on 1st November 1920 to a single count before Judge Clarence Hale, who declared before sentencing, here was a man with all the duties of seeking large money. He concocted a scheme which, on his counsel's admission, did defraud men and women. It will not do It will not do to have the world understand that such a scheme as that can be carried out without receiving substantial punishment. Ponzi was sentenced to 5 years in federal Ponzi was sentenced to 5 years in federal prison. Right? Massachusetts. Ponzi was released after 3.5 years and was almost immediately indicted on 22 state charges of larceny, which came as a surprise to Ponzi. He thought he had a deal calling for the state to drop any charges against him if he pleaded guilty to federal charges. He sued, claiming that he would be facing double jeopardy in Massachusetts. Essentially retired, essentially, try it again, essentially retried him for the same offenses spelled out in the federal indictment. The case Ponzi versus Fessenden Ponzi versus Fessenden made it all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court on the 27th of March in 1922. The Supreme Court ruled that federal plea bargains have no standing regarding state charges. It also ruled that Ponzi was not facing double jeopardy because Massachusetts was charging him with larceny, while the federal government charged him with mail fraud, even though the charges implicated the same criminal operation. All right. So, blah, 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 was investigated. Florida, same thing. Uh, he went back to Italy. So, he went back to Italy. This fast forward real quick. So, Ponzi was released in 1934. With the release came an immediate order to have him deported to Italy. Okay, so let's try it again. So, Ponzi was he got busted in Florida also in Italy, and he died. This is when he died. Okay, so Ponzi spent the last years of his life in poverty, working occasionally as a translator. His health deteriorated, and in 1941, a heart attack left him considerably weakened. His eyesight began failing, and by 1948, he was almost completely blind. A brain hemorrhage paralyzed his left leg and arm. Ponzi died in a charity hospital in Rio de Janeiro. The hospital São Francisco de Assis of Federal University of Rio de Janeiro on 18 January 1949. So in popular culture, right? So Jake Epstein portrays Ponzi in Home of the Holidays, the third standalone Christmas special of the Canadian television period detective series. Try it again. Try it from Jake. So Jake Epstein portrays Ponzi in Home for the Holidays, the third standalone Christmas special of the Canadian television period detective series, Murdoch Mysteries. In 2016, Ponzi's international postal coupon scheme was the target of investigation by White Rabbit Project host Troy Bellecci in the 4th episode, claiming first place for the episode among 5 other contenders due to its originality and the amount gotten away with in modern currency despite the short duration of 8 months. All right, that makes sense. But anyway, back to Ponzi Charles Ponzi was a psycho. Some psychiatrists call him like that, just a psycho, right? But I mean, he's like a kind of like a serial killer kind of guy. Like he'll just do whatever it takes to kill people. This guy would do whatever it takes to swindle people. You know, criminal minds. I mean, this guy was not stupid. I mean, he could speak multiple languages. He had a drive to succeed, and although he kind of ripped people off, you got to give him that, right? So what I'm getting at, guys, is that if you see anyone trying to recruit you for some kind of anything, cryptocurrency or whatever it is, and if you got to recruit people, even if they tell you you don't have to recruit, you can just sit back, relax. The bottom line is you're telling you that so that you just stay in and you shut your mouth and you get paid a little bit while the guy that's controlling the scheme brings in people, and that's it. If somebody's claiming they're trading, they're not. They're not. They're not trading. They're manipulating people. Come on in, recruit people. Hey Jimmy, you recruit five. That's typical, like what Amway back in the day, Shackley and Melaleuca. Man, that's crazy. So anyway, if you're ever in a situation and your friends go, hey man, I'm making money, and once they talk about recruiting people, blah blah blah, and they speak a good game because the owner of the company, the CEO of this scheme, is saying stuff like, I wanna end homelessness. Oh, oh, heartfelt. And he'll say, I'm only gonna take pennies of your money to invest. Yeah. And then you try to get your money out, it's frozen. But anyway, Ronson Brown. This is about not Bernie Madoff. This is about Charles Ponzi. This guy from Italy came to the U.S. Smart mind, evil thinking, evil spirit. All right. So don't be conned, don't be fooled, don't get ripped off by a Ponzi scheme. Smell a Ponzi scheme. Again, if you got to recruit people or they claim you're going to be making so much interest every day, if it's compounded, if it's monthly, annually, whatever, it's a lot of BS. All right. And especially if they say it's like almost 100% winning rate, just think about this saying. You think the best hitter in the major leagues going to hit the best hitter in the major leagues in baseball is going to hit a home run every game? Nah, BS. Guys, take care. God bless.